What was the underlying issue that provoked a response from the citizenry?
Well, there's one.
Well, the biggest one was that the decision on the hotel was really made through a city council subcommittee, the EDLU committee. Then it went to the city council. There were a total of under 15 people involved in the final decision making. The public hearing happened after the decision on how much of the property, what the exact configuration of the land to be sold was. That was the first decision that came out of EDLU. The other
Actually,
decision.
No, the
can I
first
interrupt
was-
because
Yeah.
that's not exactly correct.
Okay.
Because the first step that happened,
Bidding.
well, the
But
legal.
let me interrupt. This is exactly why we're
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
there's going to be
That's good.
different points
So
of
it's
view
yeah.
and different
included
sorts
in
of
the-
knowledge. That's why different people with different
The
points
issue
of view on it.
surplusing property, only the finance committee has the authority under our city charter to surplus property. The finance committee is the city property committee. So first of all, the city council voted took 2 votes on it in open session to surplus that land.
But the conversation
But
was
it
very
didn't happen.
informed, the underlying problem was
saying it
better.
Yeah.
what-
But so we.
I'm just
Let-
saying, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't agree with that this was made by
Content.
EDLU.
No,
Because it was
you're
made
absolutely
by the
right.
city council.
You're absolutely right.
And then,
It was,
then EDLU and the finance committee, both, actually the finance committee is the only committee that actually took a vote on the
What's
RFP.
EDLU?
What is EDLU?
Economic development, housing and land use.
But long before it became any committee was an underlying feeling that there was better use for this land.
yes.
Right.
And that discussion never, in my mind, because I was a
public
city councilor
conversation.
through all that period, that never was defined and then
Yes.
hearings held. Groups met, but there was no general.
Brownfields grant was applied for, they got the money to clean that up.
So is it a broader issue of how
Yeah.
use
How
of
the
public
disposition of
land is
first
determined?
happened.
And I'm
Yes.
not disagreeing with
No,
you, Mary,
but
on.
it was more, from my point of view, the difference with how that was disposed of than how Florence Grammar or South Street were dealt with.
Mhm.
And with those, it started at a community-based level at the very beginning before anybody decided what to do with the buildings.
Yeah.
Whereas here, that initial, what Alex is saying, where the community sat in the room and said, or the charrette, or whatever you want to call it. We had done a downtown charrette, and in that, years ago, there was some phrase about developing brownfields, but that particular brownfields development never had that public meeting. So by the time the public knew what was going on, even though there were, votes taken, because I counted, there were only 15 people who ever were at a meeting where the final decisions were made on that process. So nobody really knew what was happening until there was the image posted. And that was real, and then had already gone through planning. People didn't really realize it had gone through planning. And Fran, who was on planning at the time, really had no idea what she was signing off on. It wasn't, so that was really, it was from the very, very first time that it was talked about that.
And the bid process, people were very upset about. There was a lawsuit about the bid.
The other issue,
Well,
Mary, I wanted to
there
add
still
is
is,
that
as
some
far
of
as
this, the context, because a lot of this stuff you're describing took place during the time that the council was debating the education use overlay district. It was all happening
Yes.
during that same period.
Yes.
So.
And people were not paying attention.
If you go back and look at the meeting where the city planner came and discussed the awarding of the RFP to the hotel group, much of the public comment period was devoted to the overlay. Most people were focused on the overlay. There was a pretty long discussion by the council about the awarding of the bid. It wasn't a vote or anything, we were being briefed on it, but it's interesting the contrast, because most of the members of the public who were there weren't there to talk about the hotel, they were there to talk about something else, so.
No,
And I'm not saying I'm just saying
It's absolutely true.
a confluence
And
of
it was
big issues.
also that the paper did nothing about it.
Mhm.
The paper they didn't even talk about what was
I agree.
going on at that, and that's the real,
Okay.
which doesn't seem to come up here very much, and I was somewhat surprised that the role of the media in the civic life.
I agree.
It
Because there were
doesn't-
3 or
I
4
put it
architectural
somewhere.
district
Somewhere, but-
hearings,
Yeah.
which were never covered.
Never
I
covered.
was there, there
Never
was a single
covered.
reporter there.
Yeah, and that was what was, but it's surprising to me that it didn't come up on these sheets.
Can I just say
either.
something about, I think this is a really good tool, but I think it's our next
Yeah.
step. I think we do need to get back to sort of reducing this to these usable forms, then improving it around this kind of discussion into something like that, because
So describe the step that's in between.
Just reducing this to handouts, you know.
But don't you, I'll just say one more thing,
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
because I think what just happened here is what I was trying to capture here, because there are different points of view and there's different sources of information that everyone doesn't have in making their decisions around this. So, you know, the point is, it's the issue, the problem, the challenge, whatever you want to call it, is not the hotel, as we all know. The hotel is just the catalytic experience that brings forth
The fruit of the tree.
the underlying processes that need to be exposed or aren't there. And so it was like just what was said, the surprise that it wasn't in the public media. Well, that's
There you
could,
go.
you know, could be written up as this one statement under, put your glasses on, Jason, so you can see what you wrote. I think there's a communication process. That doesn't mean just internal, that means also other types of processes that need to be either created or enhanced. I'm just saying, I think what you need to do can be done on here, because the debate you have to have as a committee is what exactly is the underlying issue.